Have you ever noticed that your adult children seem to become more dependent on you as they get older rather than less? You raise them to be independent, capable people, yet here you are in your retirement years, still solving their problems and managing their crises. Perhaps you found yourself transferring money from your savings account more often than you'd like to admit. Maybe your phone buzzes constantly with demands for help, babysitting, or financial rescue. You might be wondering if this is just what loving parents do, or if something has gone terribly wrong. The truth is, you may be unknowingly creating the very dependency you hope to prevent. Many elderly parents find themselves trapped in a cycle they never intended to create. You worked hard your entire life, raised your children with love and dedication, and looked forward to peaceful, golden years. Instead, you're busier than ever, managing the affairs of middle-aged children who should be managing themselves. Your retirement savings dwindle as you cover their emergencies. Your energy depletes as you provide endless emotional support, and your own needs get pushed aside. This isn't the natural order of things, and it's certainly not what you envisioned for your later years. The pattern feels so normal now that you might not even recognize how exhausting it has become. What you're experiencing isn't unique, and it's not a reflection of your failure as a parent. Thousands of loving elderly parents face this same dilemma every day, caught between their desire to help and the growing realization that their help might not be helping at all. You've spent decades being the problem solver, the safety net, and the reliable source of support. These are beautiful qualities that served your family well when your children were young and learning. But somewhere along the way, the temporary became permanent, and the emergency assistance became expected routine. Your children learned to turn to you first, instead of developing their own problem-solving muscles. The ancient wisdom traditions understood something about human nature that we've forgotten in our modern rush to rescue our loved ones from discomfort. True love sometimes requires us to step back and allow people to experience the natural consequences of their choices, even when those people are our children. Supporting someone means believing in their ability to handle their own life, while enabling means taking over responsibilities that rightfully belong to them. The difference between these two approaches can determine whether your relationships grow stronger or weaker over time. It can also determine whether you spend your retirement years in peace or in constant crisis management. Today, you're going to discover the specific situations where your help is actually hurting both you and your adult children. You'll learn to recognize the difference between genuine emergencies and manufactured crises, between supporting growth and preventing it. More importantly, you'll understand that setting healthy boundaries isn't selfish or unloving. It's one of the greatest gifts you can give your family. These insights will help you reclaim your peace while actually helping your children become the independent adults you always hoped they would be. The journey toward healthier family relationships starts with understanding that true parental love sometimes means saying no. To help you see this more clearly, I want to tell you a story about a woman who discovered these truths just in time to transform her family relationships. Lorraine sat in her comfortable apartment at the retirement community, staring at her phone with a mixture of exhaustion and dread. At 68, she had imagined her days would be filled with book clubs, gardening, and peaceful conversations with friends. Instead, her morning had started with yet another crisis call from her son, Russell, whose latest business venture was failing and who needed immediate financial help. Before she could even process that conversation, her daughter Cassidy had sent a string of demanding text messages about weekend babysitting, punctuated with the familiar guilt-inducing phrase, "Family should help family." Lorraine's savings account, once a source of security for her own future, had become a revolving fund for her children's poor decisions. As Lorraine walked along the tree-lined paths toward the community center for her daily exercise routine, Her phone buzzed incessantly with more demands from her children. She felt the familiar knot in her stomach that had become her constant companion, the stress that made her question whether she was being a good mother or simply an exhausted woman who had lost control of her own life. The warm desert air should have been soothing, but instead she found herself dreading each notification, each ring, each request for help that felt more like a command than an ask. She had spent so many years being available for every crisis that she no longer remembered what it felt like to have a peaceful morning. The retirement community around her buzzed with residents who seemed to enjoy their days, while she felt trapped in a prison of her own making. Near the community center's entrance, Lorraine noticed Eleanor, an 84-year-old woman with bright, intelligent eyes and a gentle smile that seemed to see everything. Eleanor was known throughout the community for her sharp mind and kind wisdom, having spent decades as a social worker helping families navigate their most difficult challenges. She sat on a bench reading a book, but looked up as Lorraine approached with her constantly buzzing phone. There was something in Eleanor's expression that suggested she understood exactly what was happening, as if she had witnessed this same scenario countless times before. When Eleanor's eyes met Lorraine's, there was an invitation there, a wordless offer of understanding that Lorraine hadn't realized how desperately she needed. If you're finding value in this message, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more wisdom on navigating life's challenges with grace and dignity. Eleanor looked up from her book as Lorraine's phone buzzed for what seemed like the 100th time that morning. "You know," Eleanor said gently, closing her book and patting the space beside her on the bench, "I've been watching you walk these paths for months now, and I've noticed something. You carry that phone like it's a chain around your neck." Lorraine hesitated for a moment, then sat down beside this woman who seemed to radiate a peace she hadn't felt in years. "It's my children," Lorraine admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "They need so much help, and I don't know how to say no. My son Russell just called about another business failure, and my daughter Cassidy expects me to drop everything whenever she needs a babysitter. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in their problems." Eleanor nodded knowingly, her weathered hands folded peacefully in her lap. "How old are your children, dear?" she asked. "Russell is 45 and Cassidy is 42, Lorraine replied, then paused as the weight of those numbers settled in the air between them. 45, Eleanor repeated softly. "When I was 45, I was running a household, managing a career, and helping my own elderly parents navigate their health challenges. I wonder what would have happened to me if my mother had been solving all my problems at that age." Lorraine felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition she wasn't quite ready to name. "But they really do need help," she protested weakly. "Russell's businesses keep failing, and Cassidy is overwhelmed with her kids and marriage. If I don't help them, who will?" "That," Eleanor said with a gentle smile, "is exactly the question that's keeping them from growing up. You see, Lorraine, I spent 30 years as a social worker, and I learned something that might surprise you. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is refuse to rescue our children from their own choices." She paused, watching a group of residents stroll past, chatting and laughing together. "I've seen so many families where well-meaning parents created exactly what you're experiencing now. Middle-aged children who never learned to solve their own problems because someone was always there to do it for them." Lorraine's phone buzzed again, and she instinctively reached for it, but Eleanor gently placed her hand over Lorraine's. "Let me share with you 9 specific situations where helping your adult children actually hurts them. I think you'll recognize every single one. Situation number 1, when they demand money for failed business ventures." As if on cue, Lorraine's phone rang with Russell's contact photo lighting up the screen. Eleanor nodded encouragingly. "Answer it, but listen to yourself while you're talking to him. Notice what's really happening in the conversation." Lorraine answered with her usual breathless urgency. "Hi, Russell. What's wrong now?" Russell's voice came through agitated and demanding. "Mom, I need you to transfer another $3,000 to my account today. The investor I told you about pulled out at the last minute, and if I don't cover the lease payment by 5 o'clock, I'll lose everything. This is a real emergency, not like the other times," Eleanor whispered quietly. "How many times has Russell had a real emergency that required your immediate financial rescue?" Lorraine felt the familiar panic rising in her chest, but also a dawning recognition of the pattern. "Russell," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I've already given you quite a bit of money for this business venture. Maybe it's time to speak with a financial counselor about creating a sustainable plan." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening, followed by an explosion of anger that made Lorraine's stomach clench. "I can't believe you're abandoning me when I need you most. This is my future we're talking about, Mom. Don't you care about my success?" "Here's what's really happening," Eleanor explained softly as Lorraine held the phone away from her ear. "Every time you rescue Russell from the natural consequences of poor business decisions, you prevent him from learning the financial discipline and risk assessment skills he desperately needs. You're not helping his businesses succeed. You're enabling them to fail repeatedly because he knows you'll always be there to cushion the fall." Lorraine looked at Eleanor with growing understanding. "But what if this time is different? What if he really could succeed with just this one more investment?" Eleanor shook her head gently. "That's exactly what gambling addicts tell themselves, dear. And in a way, Russell has become addicted to your financial rescues." Situation number 2. When they expect you to mediate their marriage problems. Before the conversation with Russell could continue, Lorraine's phone chimed with a text message from Cassidy. The message was long and emotional, filled with complaints about her husband Mark and their latest fight. At the end, it said, "Can you come over tonight and help me talk to Mark about his drinking? He'll listen to you and I can't handle this alone anymore. I really need my mum right now." Eleanor read the message over Lorraine's shoulder and nodded knowingly. "What do you usually do when Cassidy sends messages like this?" she asked. "I drop everything and go over there," Lorraine replied. "Without hesitation. I try to mediate between her and Mark, help her figure out solutions, and usually end up staying late to help with the kids too. Cassidy says I'm the only one who can get through to Mark when he's being difficult." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "And how has that worked out for their marriage over the years? Has your intervention made their relationship stronger, or has it made Cassidy more dependent on you to solve her marital problems?" The question hit Lorraine like a cold splash of water. She realized that Cassidy's marriage problems seemed to be getting worse, not better, despite years of her intervention. When you step in as the mediator between your daughter and her husband, you're preventing them from developing the communication skills they desperately need, Eleanor explained. You're also sending Mark the message that his wife doesn't trust him enough to work things out between them, and you're teaching Cassidy that she doesn't have to learn how to handle conflict in her own marriage. Lorraine felt a wave of recognition wash over her. "So when I help her with her marriage problems, I'm actually making her marriage weaker?" Eleanor nodded gravely. "You're teaching both of them that they're not capable of solving their own relationship issues," Eleanor suggested. That Lorraine respond to Cassidy's text with love but clear boundaries. Tell her you love her and believe in her ability to handle this situation with her husband. Offer to listen if she needs to talk, but make it clear that the solutions need to come from her and Mark, not from you. Lorraine typed a response that felt both caring and terrifying. "Cassidy, I love you and I know this is difficult. I believe you and Mark can work through this together. I'm here if you need someone to listen, but I think it's important for you two to handle this as a couple." The response from Cassidy came quickly and was filled with hurt and betrayal. "I can't believe you're abandoning me when I need you most. I thought I could count on my mother, but apparently you've decided to become selfish." Situation number 3. When they expect you to pay their essential bills. The next morning brought Russell to Lorraine's apartment door, unannounced and carrying a folder of papers. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the mortgage situation. Sarah and I are 3 months behind, and if I don't make a payment by Friday, we'll lose the house. The kids will be homeless, and it will all be because I couldn't provide for my family." He spread the papers across her kitchen table with dramatic flair. "I've got all the documentation right here. You can see exactly how much we need, and when it's due. This isn't about another business venture. This is about keeping your grandchildren in their home." Eleanor, who had arrived for their planned morning walk, observed the scene with knowing eyes. "Russell," she said gently, "this mortgage is in your name, which means you signed a legal document promising to make these payments. What was your plan for making them when you signed that agreement?" Russell looked annoyed by her presence, but answered defensively, "My plan was that the business would be generating income by now, but things happened that were beyond my control, and now I need family support to get through this rough patch." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "And when you get through this rough patch, what's your plan for making future mortgage payments?" The question seemed to stump Russell, who clearly hadn't thought beyond the immediate crisis. "I'll figure something out. I always do. But right now, I need my mother to help me, and she's being influenced by people who don't understand our family." Lorraine felt the familiar guilt rising, especially when she thought about her grandchildren. "But Eleanor," she said, "what if the children really do lose their home? How can I live with myself, knowing I could have prevented that?" Eleanor's expression remained compassionate but firm. "Lorraine, how many times have you prevented Russell from losing something important? And has that made him more responsible? With money or less responsible?" The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. Every time Lorraine had rescued Russell from financial consequences, he had taken bigger risks and made poorer decisions, as if he knew she would always be there to catch him. "When you pay your adult child's mortgage," Eleanor explained, "you're not saving your grandchildren. You're teaching them that adults don't have to be responsible for their own commitments. You're also preventing Russell from learning the management skills he needs to provide stability for his family." Russell left that morning angry and threatening, but Lorraine felt something shift inside her. For the first time, she was beginning to see her financial rescues as obstacles to her son's growth rather than expressions of love. Situation number 4. When they assume your time is always available. That afternoon, Cassidy called with her usual expectant tone. "Mum, I need you to watch the kids this weekend. Mark and I have been fighting so much that we need to get away and work on our relationship. I know you probably don't have anything important planned, so this would be perfect timing. The kids love staying with you, and honestly, I could really use a break." The assumption that Lorraine's time was automatically available whenever Cassidy needed something was so ingrained that her daughter didn't even ask. She simply announced her expectations. "Actually, Cassidy, I do have plans this weekend," Lorraine said, feeling nervous about asserting her own needs. "I've committed to a book club discussion on Saturday and dinner with friends on Sunday. These are important to me, and I've been looking forward to them." The silence on the other end of the phone was heavy with disapproval and disbelief. "Are you seriously telling me that a book club is more important than helping your daughter save her marriage? I can't believe how selfish you've become since you moved to that place." Eleanor, who was listening nearby, whispered encouragement. "Your time has value, and your needs matter too." Lorraine took a deep breath and continued. "Cassidy, I love you and I want your marriage to succeed, but I can't always be available whenever it's convenient for you. If you need childcare, you'll need to make arrangements like any other parent would." The conversation deteriorated quickly, with Cassidy accusing her mother of caring more about strangers than her own family. When the call ended, Lorraine felt guilty, but also strangely empowered. "What you just experienced," Eleanor explained, "is what happens when people are forced to recognize that others have boundaries. Cassidy has been trained to expect that your time and energy are always available to her without consideration for your own needs or commitments. By saying no, you taught her that your time has value and that her convenience isn't more important than your own well-being. Lorraine was beginning to understand that her constant availability hadn't been helping Cassidy become a more independent parent. It had been enabling her to avoid developing her own childcare solutions and support systems. Situation number 5. When they expect you to handle their legal problems. The following week brought a new crisis when Russell appeared at Lorraine's door with legal documents and a look of panic. "Mom, the whole business situation has blown up into a legal mess. I'm being sued by one of my former partners, and if I don't get a good attorney, I could lose everything and maybe even face criminal charges. I need you to hire the best lawyer. You can find and pay their retainer. This is serious, Mom. We're talking about my future here." The dramatic escalation was designed to trigger Lorraine's deepest fears about her son's well-being. Eleanor, who had become a daily presence in Lorraine's life, listened carefully to Russell's plea. "Russell," she said gently, "at 45, have you never had to handle legal matters before? Most adults your age have dealt with contracts, disputes, and attorneys as part of managing their own affairs." Russell's face reddened with embarrassment and irritation. "This is different. This is serious legal trouble that requires expensive professional help, and I don't have the money for a good attorney." "I understand legal issues can be intimidating," Eleanor continued, "but there are many resources available. For people in your situation, most communities have legal aid services, many attorneys offer payment plans, and some work on contingency fees. Have you explored any of those options?" Russell turned to his mother with frustration. "Mom, are you going to let some stranger convince you to abandon your son when he's facing possible jail time? I thought family was supposed to stick together during tough times." Lorraine felt torn between her natural desire to protect her son and the growing understanding that her rescues were preventing his growth. "Russell, I believe you're capable of handling this situation yourself. You're intelligent and resourceful, and I have confidence in your ability to find appropriate legal help." The conversation that followed was difficult, with Russell cycling through anger, guilt, and threats, but Lorraine held firm to her boundaries while expressing love and confidence in his abilities. When he left, Eleanor explained that handling one's own legal affairs is a fundamental adult responsibility, and that stepping in to manage Russell's legal problems would prevent him from developing the judgment and problem-solving skills he needed. If you're finding these insights helpful and want to continue learning about healthy family boundaries, please subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Situation number 6. When they expect you to maintain their lifestyle standards. Over the next few days, both Russell and Cassidy began testing Lorraine's resolve in more subtle ways. Russell called asking for money for basic necessities like groceries and gas, while Cassidy hinted that the grandchildren were disappointed they couldn't go to restaurants and movies like they used to when Grandma was more generous. The underlying message was clear. They expected Lorraine to maintain their accustomed lifestyle, even when their own poor choices had made that lifestyle unsustainable. "We're not talking about luxury items here, Mom," Russell explained during one of his calls. "Sarah needs groceries for the kids, and I need gas money to get to job interviews. These are necessities, not wants." Eleanor, who was becoming skilled at recognizing the manipulation patterns, helped Lorraine see through the emotional blackmail. "Russell is redefining necessities to include anything he doesn't want to sacrifice," she explained. "But adults learn to adjust their lifestyle to match their income, not the other way around." When Cassidy mentioned that the children were asking why Grandma didn't take them shopping anymore, Lorraine felt the familiar guilt twist in her stomach. "But what if they really are struggling to buy food?" she asked Eleanor. "What if the children are going without things they need?" Eleanor's response was both compassionate and firm. If there's genuine food insecurity, there are proper resources for that: food banks, assistance programs, and community support. But what's really happening here is that your children are trying to maintain a lifestyle they can't afford by using emotional manipulation to access your savings. The breakthrough came when Lorraine realized that her financial support had actually enabled both children to avoid making the difficult but necessary adjustments that would lead to genuine financial stability. "Every time I've covered their extras," she told Eleanor, "they've continued spending as if nothing had changed. I've been subsidizing their poor financial choices instead of helping them learn to live within their means." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Natural consequences are the best teachers, dear. When people experience the real cost of their choices, they learn to make better decisions." Situation number 7. When they want to use your space as free storage. Next challenge came when Russell appeared at Lorraine's door with a truck full of belongings. "Mum, I need to store some things here temporarily while I get back on my feet. It's just furniture and boxes, and it won't be for long. You've got plenty of space now that you're living in this smaller place." The assumption that her home was available for his convenience, without even asking permission first, highlighted how little respect he had for her boundaries. Eleanor helped Lorraine understand that this wasn't really about storage space. It was about Russell's unwillingness to face the reality of his situation. When adult children expect their parents to warehouse their belongings indefinitely, Eleanor explained, they're avoiding the difficult decisions that come with downsizing and accepting their current circumstances. By providing free storage, you're enabling them to avoid dealing with their reality. Lorraine set a clear boundary with Russell. "You can store a few essential items here for 30 days while you find a permanent solution, but this can't be a long-term arrangement. I need my space to remain comfortable and functional for my own life." Russell's initial reaction was anger and accusations of selfishness, but Eleanor had prepared Lorraine for this response. "He's testing whether your boundaries are real or just temporary," she explained. "Consistency is everything right now." The 30-day deadline came and went, with Russell making no effort to remove his belongings. When Lorraine reminded him of their agreement, he claimed he needed just a few more weeks to figure things out. This time, Lorraine was ready. "Russell, our agreement was 30 days and that time is up. I'm going to arrange for your things to be moved to a storage unit, and I'll pay for the first month. After that, it's your responsibility." The lesson wasn't just about storage space, it was about respect for agreements and other people's boundaries. Situation number 8. When they treat your home like a hotel, Cassidy's boundary violations were different but equally problematic. She had developed a habit of arriving at Lorraine's apartment unannounced, expecting meals to be prepared and entertainment to be provided for her children. "I was in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by," became her standard excuse for disrupting Lorraine's plans and treating her mother's home like a free restaurant and childcare center. "What Cassidy is doing," Eleanor explained, "is treating you like a service provider rather than a person with your own needs and schedule. She's teaching her children that grandma exists to cater to their convenience, and she's teaching herself that your time and energy have no value." The pattern had become so established that Cassidy genuinely seemed surprised when Lorraine suggested she might want advance notice for visits. Lorraine began requiring that Cassidy call ahead before visiting, and she stopped automatically providing meals and entertainment when they arrived unexpectedly. "Cassidy, I love spending time with you and the grandchildren, but I need you to respect my schedule and give me notice when you want to visit. If you'd like me to prepare a meal, I need time to plan and shop accordingly." The initial resistance was intense, with Cassidy accusing her mother of becoming cold and unwelcoming. But gradually, something beautiful began to happen. When Cassidy was required to plan visits in advance, she began to value the time more highly. When she had to contribute to meals or help with cleanup, she started showing genuine appreciation for her mother's efforts. The funny thing is, Lorraine told Eleanor after a particularly pleasant planned visit, we actually have better time together now that there are boundaries. Cassidy seems more present and grateful when she's not taking everything for granted. Situation number 9, when they use emotional manipulation to break down your boundaries. The final and most challenging situation came when both Russell and Cassidy realized that their mother's boundaries were real and consistent. Faced with the prospect of actually having to manage their own lives, they launched a coordinated campaign of emotional manipulation designed to break down her resolve. "You've changed, Mom," Cassidy said during one particularly difficult phone call. "You used to care about your family, but now you only care about yourself and your new friends at that place." Russell's approach was even more direct. "I'm starting to think you don't love us anymore. The mother I knew would never let her children struggle when she had the power to help them. I don't even recognize you anymore, and neither do the grandchildren. They keep asking why Grandma doesn't want to see them anymore." The accusations were designed to trigger Lorraine's deepest fears about being perceived as a bad mother and grandmother. Eleanor helped Lorraine understand that this escalation was actually a positive sign. When people resort to emotional manipulation, it means their other strategies aren't working. They're trying to make you feel so guilty and afraid that you'll abandon your boundaries to make the emotional pain stop. She taught Lorraine to respond to manipulation with calm consistency rather than defensive explanations. "I love you both very much, and that's exactly why I can't continue to enable behaviors that prevent you from growing and becoming independent." The manipulation attempts became increasingly desperate, with both children threatening to cut off contact entirely if Lorraine didn't return to her old patterns. "Fine, Mom. If you want to choose strangers over your own family, that's your decision. But don't expect us to keep calling and visiting when you've made it clear we're not important to you anymore." The threats were terrifying for Lorraine, who had spent her entire adult life prioritizing her children's needs above her own. But Eleanor had prepared her for this final test. "This is what I call the extinction burst," she explained. "When you stop rewarding certain behaviors, they often get worse before they get better. Your children are trying every emotional weapon in their arsenal to get you to go back to the old way of doing things. The intensity of their efforts actually proves how much they've been depending on your enabling and why it's so crucial that you hold firm." The breakthrough came during a family dinner at the community center, where Lorraine had invited both children to meet Eleanor properly. Initially defensive and hostile, Russell and Cassidy gradually found themselves listening as Eleanor shared stories from her decades as a social worker. She spoke about families where elderly parents had exhausted themselves trying to fix their adult children's problems, ultimately helping no one and depleting themselves in the process. "Your mother's boundaries aren't a rejection of you," Eleanor explained gently. "They're an expression of confidence in your abilities. She's finally treating you like the capable adults you are, instead of the children you used to be." Something in her tone, free from judgment but full of respect for their potential, seemed to penetrate their defensive anger. For the first time in years, Russell and Cassidy began to see their mother's actions not as abandonment, but as love expressed in a way they hadn't recognized. Russell was the first to acknowledge the truth. "I guess I have been taking advantage of your generosity, Mom. I kept telling myself it was just temporary help, but I can see now that I was using your rescue as an excuse not to face my own problems." Cassidy's recognition came more slowly, but she eventually admitted, "I think I've been treating you more like an employee than like a person with your own needs and feelings. I never really considered that you might have plans or preferences that mattered as much as mine." The transformation wasn't complete or immediate, but the foundation for healthier relationships had been established. Both children began to understand that their mother's boundaries demonstrated love, not rejection. They started to see that her confidence in their abilities was more respectful than her previous rescues had been. Most importantly, they began to experience the satisfaction that comes from solving their own problems and managing their own lives. Eleanor's wisdom had guided Lorraine through 9 specific situations where helping was actually hurting, teaching her to distinguish between supporting her children's growth and enabling their dependency. The elderly parents who learn these lessons, Eleanor explained, often discover that their relationships with their adult children become stronger and more genuine once the dynamics of rescue and dependency are replaced with mutual respect and healthy boundaries. Please give this video a like if these insights have helped you recognize patterns in your own family relationships. 6 months later, Lorraine sat in the same spot where she had first met Eleanor, but everything had changed. Her phone still rang regularly, but the conversations were different now. Russell called to share updates about his new job and to ask for advice rather than money. Cassidy scheduled visits in advance and often brought dinner to share instead of expecting it to be provided. The grandchildren seemed happier and more respectful, having learned that time with Grandma was special rather than automatic. Most remarkably, Lorraine felt peaceful for the first time in years. Eleanor joined her on the bench, smiling at the transformation she had witnessed. "How are you feeling about the changes in your family?" she asked. Lorraine took a deep breath of the warm desert air, no longer accompanied by the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. "I feel like I have my life back," she said. "But more than that, I feel like I've given my children their lives back too." Russell is actually proud of solving his own problems now, and Cassidy has become more confident in her parenting and her marriage. They're becoming the adults I always hoped they would be. The journey hadn't been easy, and there had been moments when Lorraine questioned whether she was doing the right thing. But Eleanor's guidance had helped her understand that true love sometimes requires difficult choices. "The hardest part," Lorraine reflected, "was learning to trust that my children were capable of handling their own lives. I had been so focused on protecting them from discomfort that I forgot. Discomfort is often how we learn and grow." Eleanor nodded knowingly. "You gave them the gift of your confidence in their abilities, even when they didn't have confidence in themselves. Now, as you've listened to Lorraine's story and learned about these 9 situations where helping actually hurts, you might be recognizing patterns in your own family relationships. Perhaps you've seen yourself in Lorraine's constant rescues, or maybe you've identified ways that your well-intended help has been enabling dependency rather than encouraging growth. The question isn't whether you love your adult children. That's never been in doubt. The question is whether your love is being expressed in ways that help them become stronger or in ways that keep them dependent. Take a moment to think about your own situation. How many times have you rescued your adult children from the natural consequences of their choices? How often do you find yourself managing crises that they should be handling themselves? When was the last time you said no to a request for help, not because you don't care, but because you care too much to enable their dependency? These aren't easy questions, but they're necessary ones if you want to create healthier family relationships. The beautiful truth that Lorraine discovered is that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's one of the most loving things you can do for your family. When you stop rescuing your adult children from every difficulty, you give them the opportunity to discover their own strength and resilience. When you refuse to manage their emotions and solve their problems, you communicate your faith in their ability to handle their own lives. When you value your own time and energy, you teach them to value it too. Your golden years should be filled with peace, not constant crisis management. You deserve relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided dependency. Your adult children deserve the chance to experience the satisfaction that comes from solving their own problems and managing their own affairs. The grandchildren in your life deserve to see healthy relationship dynamics modeled for them, not patterns of manipulation and rescue that they might repeat in their own futures. The change begins with you recognizing that enabling isn't love. It's fear disguised as love. It's the fear that your children can't handle life without you. The fear that saying no makes you a bad parent. The fear that setting boundaries will damage your relationships. But as Lorraine learned, the opposite is true. Healthy boundaries create stronger relationships, and confidence in your children's abilities helps them develop that confidence in themselves. How are you going to apply these lessons to your own family relationships? Will you continue the patterns that exhaust you and infantilize your adult children, or will you begin the brave work of setting boundaries that serve everyone's growth? The choice is yours. But remember that every day you delay is another day that prevents both you and your children from experiencing the peace and respect you all deserve. If this message has inspired you to examine your own family patterns and consider making positive changes, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more wisdom on creating healthier relationships and finding peace in your golden years.